Welcome back to another Shatterproof speaker series. I'm Renee Barros, Community Engagement Director for Shatterproof, and all that really means is I am tasked with engaging with people in the community to have important conversations around the topic of addiction. Our friends at Art with Impact have been working hard putting together Voices with Impact, an annual year-long project that celebrates mental health stories told by filmmakers with unique perspectives and lived experiences. The 2021 topics for the 5-minute short films are mental health issues specific to Black people and mental health issues related to immigrant experiences. Here with me today to talk about her film Belong is one of the filmmakers from the festival, Sideah Alladice. Welcome, Sideah.
Hi, thank you for
Hey,
having me.
yes, thank you for joining us. So I've watched the short film. For those of us who have not seen it, tell us a little bit about what it's about. I know it's short, so you can't say too much, but give us the
Mhm.
gist.
So it's an autobiographical film. So it's my experience with my mental health growing up in Canada. And it just follows me basically from just before high school to about maybe 10 years past that.
Okay, so let's dive right into the topic here about mental health issues. So, in the addiction space, we often hear people talk about how mental health disorders often coincide with substance use disorders, but in reality, substance use disorder is a mental health issue. At the time, you probably didn't realize you were struggling with mental health issues, but looking back now, can you tell us where your struggles began?
Hmm. I think that's a really good point to make, that mental health and addiction they're so intertwined, right? And I think in the beginning, when I was quite young, maybe 13, 14, using substances, whether it's drinking or smoking pot or anything else that I could basically find my hands on, was a way to soothe, or it was a way to feel like you belonged, or it was a way to make yourself feel better. So I agree with it, definitely. I think I felt very out of place at that time in my life, and I think I felt that I wasn't on solid ground, and using drugs or using alcohol definitely was just a way for a cry for help, and also a way to soothe myself. And
So,
then
taking it back a little bit further,
mhm,
um, frame for us what your life was like growing up.
I grew up in North Vancouver, which is a really nice area, a suburb outside of Vancouver in Canada. I spent a lot of time outside, but I think what the problem was is that there weren't a lot of people of color in my neighborhood.
Mhm.
So there was a little bit of bullying and a little bit of teasing, and I was constantly trying to fit in. And I think that paired with my, uh, what's the word that I'm looking for? It's just when I started to develop at 13, it was easier for me just to use drugs or alcohol to fit in.
So, around 13 is when it all really started to unravel for you. And
Hmm.
what did that look like? What did your struggle look like?
I have to go back in time. Give me a second. I think
Sure.
it started quite innocently, just of maybe some people in high school. So I entered high school at 13. Some people would be at the smoke pit, so I joined them and have a few cigarettes. And then it turned to running away at night and staying over with people who are drinking. And then that turned into me moving out, and living with a boyfriend at 15 who was also using drugs and drinking quite a bit. So that's basically, I mean, there's just been a lot of change over the years of how I use drugs and alcohol. But when I first started, that's what it looked like, which I think is relatable to a lot of people, in terms of you just start down one path and then it's just easier to keep going and going.
So, underneath it all, tell us why you didn't feel like you belonged.
Being a person of color and being biracial, because you're constantly straddling this line of, you're not dark enough to be with other people who are darker than you, but then you're not light enough to ever be with white people, and it's a very confusing place to live. And most of my family members are white, which I love them to death. They're great, but definitely trying to find that sense of belonging, because you're with all these people that you love, but then they're telling you that something's different about you, but you don't have that, you're not connected to that difference. So it was challenging for me.
I think at times we often overlook the fact that humans are pack animals. And at the end of the day, we all just want to belong. We all want to fit in. We all want to see ourselves in other people. And for someone like you that comes from mixed racial parents, that's got to be hard. I
Mm,
see this. I have a stepdaughter who is Brazilian, and she is 22 years old, and she says that to me all the time. Like, I'm not black enough to be black. I'm not white enough to be white, and there's no one else like me here. So
mm.
I see that. So taking it back to your struggle with substance use disorder, what what led what led to your recovery?
Like what we said, like I've said before, it's been quite a strange journey. And I think that substance use was sort of this card I had in my pocket that I could always go to if things became bad. So if I was stressed or I was unsure, it was just so much easier to drink or to use. And in the beginning of it, it was a rebellion, but then as I got older, it became much more of a way to fit in.
Mm-hmm.
And but when you're using it to try to fit in, you're also just picking that card up all the time, when you don't need to. So I worked in hospitality for quite a long time, which is a bit of a dangerous environment because they normalize so many behaviors that just really aren't normal. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought that my drinking was
Normal.
less than other people, when really you step out of that and you realize, oh my gosh, people don't live their lives like this. And I don't mean to laugh at it. I'm laughing at myself. But once I left hospitality and I got more and more into filmmaking, I decided to stop, and I haven't looked back since.
Did you have this moment where you were like, I have a problem? Or was it one of those things where you kind of just naturally found your way out of it and then looking back realized it was an issue?
Naturally found my way out of it, and looking back realized how much of an issue it was.
What types of things do you do to help you stay sober?
Meditation is really big for me. So I've done daily meditation for almost a year. And I think that was the entry point for me to stop drinking, because I had been meditating for about 3 months and I realized after having a glass of wine that I really didn't feel that great. So I decided to give myself a break, and then it's just continued. But meditation, exercise, I mean, I'm sure what people have said all the time before, but uh, and surrounding myself with people who are supportive and people who also have activities and hobbies that they like to do, and not just drinking and having too much fun.
Got it. So you said, can you talk a little bit more about the Black Lives Matter movement and how that gave you a voice?
Well, I'm thinking of what you said about your stepdaughter. Is I see myself as I'm half black, half white, and you're constantly trying to find where you are. And then when the Black Lives, the movement picked up speed again, I started to realize that there's so many people like me, and there's so many people on that spectrum of whether you have light skin or dark skin or curly hair. Your hair is not that curly, you still are a person of color. And it really just gave me the voice gave me a voice to continue speaking my stories, because there was never a place for it before. There was never a place to say I had these struggles and this is why I was drinking and this is why I was using drugs. But now hearing other stories, I understand that I wasn't alone, and that really, I think, pushed everything forward in terms of me wanting to be sober and me wanting to tell stories and help others tell stories. So
You talk about this movement helping you to live your truth. And I hear this all the time with people in recovery, and not just people in recovery, actually, people as a whole. Don't we all feel better when we're just able to live our truth and be our authentic selves and just be seen, right?
mm-hmm.
Now let's talk
Absolutely.
stigma.
Mm-hmm.
The definition of stigma is a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. One of our biggest challenges in reversing the addiction crisis is stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Racism is one of the ultimate stigmas, and stigmas are perpetuated by not being able to talk about it. By creating this film and being able to talk about it, did it help you to heal?
Um, I'm laughing because I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. This is the second film I've made, and I make films about really personal things that are happening in my life. And usually, what happens within my family and my group of friends is it causes a little bit of kerfuffle. Like people don't.
Yeah.
I think it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And with stigma, that's so huge because I think you do heal by talking about it. And you do heal by knowing that you're not this person who's having this completely independent experience all by yourself. And there's so many people who are going through similar things that aren't speaking about it. But I think the stigma is probably what stopped me from talking about it for a really long time and prevents a lot of people from healing. And I think that again, there are a lot of people who are probably in my circumstances or even worse circumstances who just don't see the light and can't see that there are other ways to live. I'm not saying like they don't have the brain power to see that there's not another way to live, but they don't understand that maybe they don't understand the reasons for why they're using. And I think understanding the reasons for why you're making choices is what is healing.
And helps you find a way out. So, to someone who might be struggling with a substance use disorder right now, what would be your best advice for them finding their way out?
I think it's tough. I mean, I wouldn't want to speak as if I know what's best for someone, but I think that for me, I just came to a point where I needed a shift in my life, and I rocked everything in my life, all of my friendships, my jobs, basically so many things completely fell away, and I had to build myself up again. So sometimes it's easy to say, maybe I'll just have speaking for myself, I say maybe I'll just have a glass of wine, a glass of beer, and I won't do this. But ultimately, I had to change everything: myself, my friends, my job, my environment, and that's what really, really helped me because now my world is just completely different, and I'm doing things that are fulfilling and doing things when I have a purpose.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. I read this study the other day that was about a rat that was in a cage, and it had two bottles of water to drink from, and one was laced with heroin and the other was laced with water. When we put the rat in the cage by itself with only those two options, every rat eventually would keep choosing the heroin laced water and kill themselves or overdose.
Mm.
They did the same study where they had the two bottles of water and they had a community of rats with balls to play with rats to mate with all these other things going on. And the incidence of addiction and overdose was so much lower in that cage. So, and like you, I don't want to speak on behalf of like what will work for everybody, but this is something we hear a lot is about people needing to change the cage. So needing to change their lifestyle and things like that. So it sounds like that's what worked for you.
Mhm.
Um, what's next in your filmmaking career?
That's fun. I start production on my third film next month. So we are making a film about women of color in the workplace. It's
Love
very
it.
broad. Excuse me. I'm also producing a podcast. It's called That's Trash. So it's just about life as biracial women. And we talk about life, love, relationships. So
I
that will be
love it.
released in September.
That's awesome. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sideah, by being open and honest and vulnerable about your experiences, you're paving the way for other people to feel seen, heard, and validated as they struggle with life's challenges, whether it may be substance use disorder, racism, or the uncomfortable combination of both. Your work aligns with our mission of eliminating stigma, so thank you so much for making this film and taking time to talk with us today.
You're so welcome. It was a pleasure.
If you would like to see Sideah's film Belong or any of the other short films in Voices with Impact, head on over to artwithimpact.org and get registered. Seats are free, but they are limited. Thank you for being here again.
My pleasure.